on. Oh yes, oh it is, oh crikey, yes. Well, yes, follow that. I mean, it was an honour, isn't it, to follow someone talking about Orgreave after 30 years, and also, particularly, to remember, after today at Unison Conference, that you can't silence women. I think that's quite an important point. Comrades, this is quite a small meeting. And I've spoken at big meetings and I've spoken at small meetings. And sometimes you get the best things out of small meetings. Gordon will appreciate this, he's speaking after me a little bit later on. Under the rules of Unison's Labour Link, there's no quorum for a branch Labour Link meeting. I remember once calling a branch Labour Link meeting in my Unison branch and no one else turned up. So I decided to chair the meeting. I called myself to speak. I spoke very well. Everyone at the meeting agreed with what I said. I didn't feel there was a need for a seconder. And having heard what had been said, the chair called a vote, and the meeting unanimously agreed with a motion that then went forward through our policy-making procedures. And it was a motion against privatisation, which is one of the things we're here to talk about this evening. I do want to mention also, in commenting on the fact it's a small meeting, that on the way here I bumped into a good LRC comrade who's the secretary of our West Sussex branch of Unison, Daniel Sultan, and he said he's sorry he can't be here. But as people who were at a local government conference will know, West Sussex branch have had their facility time savaged. So he's back home to get on with some Unison branch work, because he's got no choice but to do that. But he wished us well for this meeting. And of course we oppose privatisation, of course we do. Those of us who were at Unison Conference earlier today, the conference debated a motion about the fragmented workforce. Why have we got a fragmented workforce? Because of privatisation. Because public services that years ago were provided in an organised way under democratic control by local authorities or by the government have now been sold off and hived off hither and yon all over the place. And what that leads to is what we have to deal with, those of us who are Unison activists, every day. I've been representing a member of my branch. He's our branch young members officer. He's a shop steward. He's someone of whom I'm incredibly proud. He's trying to unionise a private sector social care provider. The workers for that social care provider were employed on 0 hours contract. What they do is they provide important social care for vulnerable adults living in their own homes, but in settings where you've got 3 or 4 people living in a home, and then there were workers working in that building. There's someone there 24 hours a day to support these vulnerable adults. These workers are on 0 hours contracts. They're paid less than the London living wage, and they work in London. I'm branch secretary in Lambeth. And they have to work 60, 70 hours a week to earn a decent wage that they can actually live on. And our activists, our union activists, who's been trying to unionise his members, you know, well, they are his members, they've joined the union, his colleagues. Twice this year he's been suspended. And I'm pleased to say twice he's been returned to work, but the most recent time he was suspended, the disciplinary offence that was alleged against him was that he'd been asking people to join the union, and the employer said that was bullying. That's the consequence of privatisation, and that's the point of privatisation. From the point of view of the working class, what we were able to do with a large public sector from the Second World War onwards was to unionise the workforce in that public sector and deliver decent conditions of employment for people. And the most important reason for privatisation is to drive down the wages and conditions of the workers who deliver public services. Now, we can reverse it. It has been reversed. I mean, again, being parochial in Lambeth, our housing benefit service was outsourced to Capita in 1997, and they made a complete dog's breakfast of it. And 4 years later, the service was brought back in-house. And we're very pleased it was brought back in-house, and we've kept it in-house ever since. And more services that were privatised are coming back in-house because the private sector delivers them so poorly. But the tide of privatisation hasn't been reversed, has it? We're seeing it more and more. You know, it was started under the Tories, under Thatcher. It wasn't reversed at all under a Labour government, under a new Labour government. between 97 and when we lost power. And we have to hope that it would be reversed under a future Labour government, but it won't be unless we do something about it. And I think the problem that we have with the Labour Party as trade unionists is not a problem with the Labour Party at all. It's a problem about our trade unions and our trade union leaders. We didn't stand up to them last time they were in government. We're standing up to them a little bit at the moment. I mean, I really welcomed, I was really pleased that our General Secretary started his conference speech with a criticism of Ed Miliband for standing there with a copy of The Sun. Yeah. And, you know, that was gut-wrenching, wasn't it, to see that happen. It shouldn't have happened. And it's tragic that it happened, because I was in this room last night in another meeting arguing with people who are not in the Labour Party, arguing with people who think the answer is that you can set up your own little political party where you agree with everyone and it's ever so friendly, and you stand your own candidates in elections, and you sort of convince yourself they didn't get a derisory vote, and you continue to persuade yourself for 20 years that they're just at the dawn of suddenly creating a mass new workers' party, which is always round the next corner. That mass new workers' party, it's always just out of sight. It's there, look, can you see it? It's just, look, it's peeking round the door. It's not. But I know a lot of people who are my friends, a lot of people who I respect, and I understand why they've given up on the Labour Party, and I sympathise with anyone who walked out of the Labour Party when we supported the Iraq War, because it was a war crime, and Tony Blair is a war criminal. I do know why people did that, but I think they were incredibly wrong. And I think that those of us who've stuck with the Labour Party are incredibly right. Because there isn't an alternative, and actually what they've been doing for us for the last 20 years is proving that there isn't an alternative. Nevertheless, we've had that argument with those people. And what they don't see is that the problem isn't the Labour Party. The problem is that our unions didn't stand up to the Labour Party in government, and we don't do it enough now. Labour didn't reverse the anti-union laws because the unions didn't ask Labour to reverse the anti-union laws. And we should have done. I mean, we did formally, because you go to a conference and pass a policy, and that's our policy, we think they should happen. But I remember being at an LRC fringe meeting at the TUC, I think, where Tony Woodley came back when he was General Secretary of D&G, and he sort of apologised to the meeting that they'd been at Warwick and they'd done the negotiations about the manifesto for whichever general election was coming up, and they hadn't pushed the repeal of the anti-union laws because they didn't think they could get it. Well, the repeal of the anti-union laws is a critical thing that we need, because what's happened in my adult lifetime, and given that for the whole of my adult life I've been a trade union activist, I really hope this isn't cause and effect, but what's happened is that we've got weaker. Trade union density has declined, our power in the workplace has declined, and our freedom of action has declined because of the anti-union laws and of our slavish compliance with them, because we don't want, do we? And this will mean something to those who are in the conference, we don't want to be in legal jeopardy, do we, So where do we go from here? Well, I'll tell you where we go from here. We build the fights we're having. That's what we've got to do. And I'm a local government worker. I'm going to be on strike on the 10th of July. I know there's going to be a yes vote in the ballot, and all our members in England, Wales and Northern Ireland, and all the members of the GMB and Unite, and I hope the NUT and PCS and loads of people will be on strike on the 10th of July, and we'll be on strike again in September, and we will fight for our members' interests. And we must do that, and we must do that very clearly. But equally, and I think those of us here who are trade unionists and those of us who are union leaders, we have to reflect on this. We must make sure that our union's intervention in the Labour Party is more assertive, more effective, and that we achieve some change in the party. Because without that, as much as I can mock those friends and comrades who've gone off and tried to make this alternative left party or that alternative left party, it's those of us in the Labour Party who really face the challenge, because we're the ones who might be able to change the world, and it's on us to try and do it. Thank you.
Thank you, John.